Hi everybody, it's Meg from Books Off the Beaten Path, and it's time for another early morning book review. It's so early morning, I'm still in my pajamas. So anyway, let's get to it. Okay, I just finished reading this one by The Watchman's Clock by Leslie Ford. And I was very intrigued by this because, let me get you a copyright date, 1932. And I looked up Leslie Ford, and I'd never heard of her, but apparently she was one of the big wigs, along with Agatha Christie and Mary Roberts Rinehart in the golden, Dorothy L. Sayers in the golden age of mystery. And I have never heard of her. And I will probably never read another one of her books again because as I put in my Goodreads review, it was like slogging through tall grass on a hot summer day. It was boring. Let me give you the setup. So the setup is there's this little fictional college town called Landover. And there's a little college in it and everything like that. And I think it's an all-boys school. I get the impression that it's an all-boys school. And there's a family, the Sutton family, who's very wealthy. And they have this guy, and his name is, we'll just call him Mr. Sutton because I don't want to look up his name. But anyway, he is very, sorry, that is Bob, chasing after something, I don't know what. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So Mr. Sutton is not liked by anyone. He's mean, crabby, and the college keeps trying to get him to give some sort of endowment to the college because he's got plenty of money. But he doesn't want to do that. He has a lot of contempt for the professors in the college and everything like that. And so our main character, our main sleuth, is Mrs. Niles. And Mrs. Niles is married to a professor of anthropology who she just flat out says that if they're not talking about anthropology, he doesn't want to talk to her. Wow, it's a great marriage. She's got 2 kids. She mentioned that once. We don't get to know anything about the kids, nothing about the kids. She does say at one point she becomes a suspect in the murder. So the murder happens late at night, and Mr. Sutton is shot in the head. And he's shot in the head in his own house. And we have all of these characters. We have Susan, we have Thorne, we have Mr. Baca, we have Abernathy Howe, who is visiting. He's a visiting Englishman and everything like that. And then we have, what was the name? We have a lot of racial stuff in here. Like most of the crime, she says, is committed by darkies. And it's just, there's a certain... I'm wandering here. I'm meandering. Give me a moment to collect my thoughts. When you read a book from 1932, when you read vintage books, you can't risk being too offended because you have to look at the time that the books were written in. But this one was pretty offensive. This one was, we had the child of former slaves had this little cottage. And they were always trying to get the cottage from her and everything like that. And they really portrayed her, this child of a former slave. And I forget her name too, because the whole thing was just forgettable. But I forget her name too. I think it was Aunt Charlotte. Was her name. Anyway, she is portrayed as not being very smart, being very easily led, being very gullible. She has a nephew, Reverdy, is I believe the name, Reverdy, and he is portrayed as being like a con man, like a two-timer, but he's being portrayed as not very smart either and everything. It was rough. It was rough going there for a little bit. But anyway, at one point, Mrs. Niles actually gets accused of the crime. The police are just completely inept. They just say, well, you were in the house at the time of the crime, so therefore you must have done it. And it's not that simple. There's an $8,000 endowment for the anthropology department, and they know that if he dies, then the endowment goes away, and blah, 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 and everything like that. It was really, I don't want to say it was poorly written, because the language in it was nice. I enjoyed that. But by the time we got to who the killer was, I had to go back and look up who that character was, because there were so many characters and so many subplots going on that this character was kind of lost in the shuffle. And it was one of those things where the police had pinned it on the English visitor, who turns out to be a con man. A lot of con man in this. Turns out to be a con man. We thought that he was like a higher up British military officer. We never really find out why he's visiting. We never really find out what his point of coming to Landover was. But the police pin it on him because he escapes. Like he gets out of there and he runs away and everything like that while they're doing the investigation. So the inept police are like, well, obviously he did it. Obviously he did it. But she, Mrs. Niles, figures out who does it at the very end of the book, along with another college professor. Like, the other college professor knew who did it, not her husband, because remember, he's not talking to her unless it's anthropology. So this other college professor is sitting next to her at commencement, and they talk about who actually did it. And so they're the only two people that know who actually did it. But the author, Leslie Ford, sort of justifies it. She justifies the murder, which I'm okay with sometimes. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, murder is all. I mean, sometimes these people, when you read the books, are really bad villains. And, you know, I don't want to be one of these people that says, oh, they should be killed and everything like that. But you can kind of see the justification. And this one, you could sort of see the justification. But it was at the very end, and it was a slog, and it was extremely racist. Just really bad racist. There is a person there from Mexico, which they call the Mexican. He's doing nefarious things. I mean, it's like anyone who is not white and associated with this college is a bad person. And she's very clear about that. Now, why they call it By the Watchman's Clock is because when Mr. Sutton gets shot in the head, the watchman who watches the grounds of the mansion and everything like that is found outside the window, and he has had a heart attack because he's so shocked by what he has seen. Apparently he witnessed the murder, and he falls on some bricks and breaks his watch. And so that's how they get the time of the murder. But as Abernathy Howell points out to the inept policeman, what if the watch was already stopped? What if the watch was not, like, you can't just say because it was cracked at that time that that's the moment of the actual murder and everything. And of course the police are like, yes, we can, that's how we do it, and everything like that. So I gave it 2 stars. You can check out my review on Goodreads if you'd like to. I'm glad that I read it because I wanted to be familiar with Leslie Ford. Will I pick up another one? No, probably not. But I do have high hopes for the new one I've started. I've started this one. This is an indie book that was sent to me by the author, which is Tessa Floreano. Is it Floreano? I believe it's Floreano. It's Murder and Matrimony in the Castello. And she has signed it for me. And she sent me a bookmark, which is cute. And so far, I started that last night. I'm a little ways into it, and it's already better than the Leslie Ford. It's already more interesting than that. So anyway, that's my early morning book review, and I hope you guys have a fantastic Sunday and are getting ready for Christmas, and I will check you later.